Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner Casey Weade. Casey is the president of Howard Bailey Financial.
Whatever risk you face during your retirement years, we've got a plan.
A published author and radio host.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
His advocacy for retirees and pre-retirees has made him a sought-after speaker and trusted financial leader.
And putting a real plan together.
This is the Purpose-Based Retirement.
Hey, it's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lee Kelso. I am here with Casey Weade, certified financial planner and the president of Howard Bailey Financial. You know, all through our investing careers, we're often taught to max out that 401k, contribute all you can, and shelter some income from taxes. Well, Casey might surprise you today because he says what you may be doing is putting a big red target on your back in an age of high debt government. So we're going to get a close look at that in just a moment. Casey answers a viewer's question about what to do with $500,000 in cash when interest rates are so low but the market values are so high, and why it's time for one time-honored rule of retirement planning to simply go away. So we have a lot to talk about today. Some of it may surprise you, including this conversation about 401k. So Casey, you're going to rock the world here telling people maybe they're not the best vehicle.
Right, a 401k may not be the best thing for you to do for your retirement. It kind of depends on you as an individual, but I think it's really good for us to understand the pros and the cons. So no matter what type of financial decision you're going to make for your future, what are the pros, what are the cons, and are you doing the best thing? What is the future going to look like? And quite often we're too focused on the present to think about what it's going to be like in 20 or 30 years as we step into retirement, especially when it comes to taxes. So what we're going to talk about is I want to talk about the reasons, the age-old reasons that may be somewhat flawed here and there for doing the 401k, also the reasons why you shouldn't do a 401k contribution, and we're also going to discuss what you should do about it.
Okay, so the good things about a 401k, of course, are they shelter some income from taxes. And it's kind of a forced savings plan that you participate in. And often the match from your employer is free money. That's all great.
Oh yeah, those are good things, right? And that first one you said is forced savings, right? So it is a forced savings vehicle. And so I would say if you're irresponsible, you're not good at self-delayed gratification, which is the number one sign of maturity. So if you're not really all that mature, then you might want to delay, you might want to go ahead and make those contributions pre-tax directly out of your paycheck to your 401k. But if you're good with your money and you know how to manage it and you're good at being someone that can delay gratification, then it makes a lot of sense, a lot more sense to take that 401k contribution and put it somewhere else. You know, again, adults like to delay gratification, right? Yep. That's a good thing. And what we can do is we can do a lot more efficient things with our money if we don't take it directly out of our paycheck and put it right in that 401k. But some of us have to do that because as soon as it hits the bank account, it's time to spend it. It's burning a hole in our pocket, and we just can't save it and put it somewhere else because we can now see it. And so it depends on you as an individual when it comes to that forced savings. The other part of that is tax savings, right? You had mentioned tax deferral benefits, and there are tax deferral benefits with your 401k. But is that really the best thing? The argument's always been you're going to be in a lower tax rate environment when you retire than you are today. We're going to get to that in just a moment and see if that really is the case or if it's not. And the last reason, and the age-old reason, is getting a match, right?
Sure, right.
You know, if you've picked up any financial article that talked about retirement savings or accumulating assets for retirement, then they've talked about making contributions and the wonders of a matching contribution from your 401k, and that is a perfectly good reason to contribute. It's never a bad thing to pick up some free money, and if you're not doing that, you need to make sure you are.
Okay, so you're on board with maxing out so you get the employer match.
Yeah, we have to get the employer match, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then after that, what are some reasons why a 401k might not be a good vehicle? Let's start taking that apart.
Well, the first thing is you're creating yourself an enormous tax liability. And the people that walk into our office that have $500,000, $1 million, whatever that number is, and it's all in one IRA, or it's all in a couple IRAs, it's all in tax-deferred savings accounts, which happens quite often. We have many retirees that step in, they've been saving in in their retirement accounts their entire lives, and now they're in the same tax bracket they were during their retirement years. But not only that, they've got additional taxes. We're going to get to that in a minute. But now if they want to buy a lake home, or they want to buy a new sports car, or they want to buy a new boat, or they want to take a big lump sum out of that IRA, they might take $100,000, $200,000 out of that IRA, and that might put them into not only a higher tax bracket, could potentially put them in the highest marginal tax bracket. Now you're paying more taxes, not just in federal taxes and state taxes, but now you're paying more Social Security taxes, you're paying Medicare taxes. It's really kind of tied your hands to those things you might want to do. I've got a gentleman right now that wanted to go buy an RV. Well, everything he has is in IRA savings, right? It's all in tax deferred savings account. Wants to go buy a new RV. He needs about $60,000. Once we analyzed it, it was going to cost him over 30% in taxes to take that distribution.
Wow.
And he decided, well, now I have to have a loan, and that's the last thing that I wanted to have during retirement. So that's one of the things we have to watch out for. You're contributing $18,000 a year to a 401k, and now you get to retirement, you've got $1 to $2 million that's never been taxed, and now somebody has to pay taxes on it.
So, talking about taxes, I mean, you know what's going on in Washington right now. We don't know. There's talk of a tax cut, but when you look down the road, there's so much debt, you almost have to believe taxes will go up.
You have to believe that one of the things, something has to happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's either going to have to be spending. We have a spending problem. There's no question about that, but it's never one-sided in Washington. It's going to be spending cuts, and it's probably going to be a combination of spending cuts and increasing taxes. And so we have to be prepared for that. And if you have everything in a tax-deferred account, everything's in your 401k, just put a huge target right on your back that said, hey, look at me. You don't think Washington recognizes that there's trillions of dollars sitting out there in IRAs and 401ks that have never been taxed? Absolutely they do. And those rules could change in the future for required distributions, or how they're taxed, or when they're taxed, or maybe even upon death, what happens to those accounts. So it's much better to have tax-free dollars. And also, if we're going to go back to that being in a lower tax bracket in retirement, we're not necessarily in a lower tax bracket in retirement. I've seen retirees pay more taxes. Because why? Because do you want to save your entire life so that you get to retirement and now you have a lower income and you have a lower standard of living than you had during your working years? Probably not. If we've done a good job, we've probably got just as much income in retirement. We've got the same income in retirement as we did in our working years, and now we are able to live the same standard of living that we had during our working years. Because if we haven't done that, not only have we, potentially had the same level of income, but now we've lost a lot of our tax deductions. We've got the home paid off, the children have left the house, so we've lost our tax deductions. And if we are taking additional taxable income, it's not just additional taxes we might pay, we also might be in a position where we're paying more in Medicare premiums, as well as more taxes on our Social Security benefits. But there are some things that you can do, and I think should do.
And I'll bet one of those is the Roth IRA, right? I mean, why not pay the taxes now?
Yeah, if you're in a 401k, first of all, get the match, right? So most 401ks have a match, even if it's just 4%. Get in there, put your 4% in, get your match, and then put those assets somewhere else. Start pouring those contributions somewhere else into a Roth IRA. Now, if you have a Roth 401k option at work, now this is the exemption to the rule on a lot of what we've been talking about, is max out that Roth 401k. Now you have the opportunity to put as much as $18,000, $24,000 a year into a Roth every single year with your 401k plan at work. And if you don't have a 401k plan with a Roth, tell your HR director they need to get on board and provide you with a Roth, because it's costing you a lot of money in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe not now, but in the future. So make sure you have a Roth 401k. If you don't have a Roth 401k, you can contribute, get the match, and then put those other assets into, say, a Roth IRA. And if we've done this in order, we've done our Roth 401k, we've maxed out our Roth 401k, we've put contributions in a Roth IRA if you're eligible to do so. Now we've got assets left over, we can do max funded life insurance. And that's one of the things that I've done for myself and my family. We've done it in that order. We don't start at the end. We start with the 401k, we go to the IRAs, and then we've allocated dollars into accounts that we know we can pull out tax-free in the future. In the meantime, it's solved my disability, long-term care needs, insurance needs, but at the same time, I'm going to be able to take tax-free distributions, and I know I'm probably going to average around 4 to 6% a year tax-free. Where else am I going to do that safely in the interest rate environment I'm in today? Great place if we've already done the proper steps prior to that.
So the bottom line here I'm feeling, though, is you have to be at an income level where this strategy really works. If you're below that, not so much.
Absolutely. You really have to be at a position where you're able to max out your other retirement accounts because we don't want to put those dollars in after-tax accounts.
All right, thanks very much for all that good information. We hope that you tracked all of that, and to learn more about the topics that we've been talking about today to ensure that you're 100% prepared for your retirement future, visit the website at thepurposebasedretirement.com, and you can pick up a free copy of Casey's latest book, The Purpose-Based Retirement. Or you can get a copy of the 2017 Guide to Maximizing Retirement Efficiency and uncover action steps that you can take this year to make 2017 your best year ever. Again, that's thepurposebasedretirement.com, and always feel free to give the team at Howard Bailey a call with any specific concerns you may have. The number is 866-482-9559. We're back. Marshall Johnson joins us, and we have questions from viewers. You stay with us.
It's your retirement. How will you live it? How will you be remembered?
Will you be able to send me an invitation?
Will you be there for my ball games?
Will you teach me your values? Will you be able to play with me?
Oh, help me go to college. How will I remember you?
You need a plan for retirement to create the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. The first step is to tune into the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with your hosts, Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson, every Saturday morning at 11 and Sunday afternoon at 1 on 1190 WOWO and 107.5 FM.
Marshall Johnson, Certified Financial Planner, has joined us here. Good to see you. We're here to take questions from viewers. So, Ryan, you are first up. Go right ahead.
I'm an HR director at a local business. We're growing quickly and have had some frustrations with our 401k provider. What should I look for in a provider?
Well, Ryan, as you're looking for a new provider, I think first of all, good job. There's a lot of HR directors that put this on the back burner and they'll say, boy, that's a lot of work. I really don't want to work on that. But they can present a huge liability to not just your business, but also the owners of that business if you don't have the right 401k plan in place. And that can mean having, number one, the right investment tools at your fingertips. You don't want to go to a big insurance provider to provide you your mutual fund because now you're paying mutual fund fees, and inside of those mutual funds you have revenue sharing. So let's watch out for utilizing any mutual funds really whatsoever. In the world we're in today, and when we're saving for retirement, it makes a lot more sense to use ETF and index funds within a 401k. We should be setting it and really forgetting it if we have the right 401k structure. We're largely providing it to individuals that are going to be saving for a long period of time. The focus should be on cost, right? So low cost investing, a lot of index funds, but not too overwhelming. So that'll be ETFs, exchange traded funds that would be provided, not mutual funds. Make sure they're not doing any revenue sharing within the plan. That would mean that the mutual fund, if they want to be on that provider's plan, they have to pay part of their fees to the provider, which always results in larger fees to the actual participants. So let's make sure there's no revenue sharing, there's diversity in the investments, low cost investments, and also we can remove the liability from the employer and the trustees on the 401k if we have a 338 fiduciary or a 321 fiduciary, removing the liability for choosing the individual investments from the actual employer or the trustee that are on the plan. And a 321 might be your cheapest avenue. It may not be the best. A 338 may be the way that you choose to go if you want somebody that actually manages those investments, doesn't just choose those investments with your direction. But there's a lot to think about, and I think that I hopefully have made that apparent when it comes to choosing a 401k, is that you don't just go with the first person that says, hey, we've got a 401k, you're going to save a bunch of money on taxes. It's always good to work with an independent company who can provide you with multiple options. When we sit down with the companies we work with, we always provide them with multiple providers. They can choose the provider and they can see complete transparency across those providers so they can make the best decision for themselves and their employees.
And I think the one thing I want to add to that, Casey, is we just have to look at all the options, because as you and I know, things have changed a lot over the last 5 years. And you talked about the trustee responsibility and the fiduciary responsibility. There's a lot of liability to these workplace plans, and if you're self-employed or you work for a smaller company, this is certainly an area that you want to focus in on, spend some time on, because technology's improved. Technology's something, what sort of platform are your client or your employees going to actually utilize? So
Well,
That's a
and
good
if
piece.
you're a smaller employer, maybe only have a few employees, maybe a simple IRA is a better way to go.
Sure.
Or if you're a single, maybe a single 401k or a SEP, if you don't have a lot of employees or you don't have any employees, that might be a way to go. 401k is a little bit more flexible in those plans. You have more opportunity to save more money in taxes as you're doing that and put more money away every single year in that 401k. So that can be a great solution. Again, I think it's good if you have somebody that's there providing the technology and providing you with options and that's acting in a completely independent manner and isn't captive to the company that they work for to provide that specific plan.
All right, thanks for your question, Ryan. Let's go up to Goshen and Karen. Karen's on the line. Go ahead, Karen.
My mom is in her late 80s and has recently made me her trustee, and she has a lot of cash at the bank. Specifically, everything she has is in cash to the point of almost $500,000. I think she needs to get this money working for her. What would you recommend?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, that was a really good question, Karen. I'm going to go back to something, a conversation my dad and I just had here recently. Dad is 67, he'll be 68 here at the end of this year. And he has done a great job saving. He's owned several businesses. He got into real estate at a young age and did fairly well in apartments, etc. And he didn't make really any of his life savings in the market, the stock market and mutual funds or stocks and bonds and things like that. It was made with blood, sweat, and tears. And he always told me when you get that blood, sweat, and tears, you take it and put it someplace that you can't lose it. Mm-hmm. You know, that business or that apartment complex, that's your stock, and you take that and you protect that life savings after you've made that money. And now Dad is getting to a point in his life where he's recently had some business transactions that turned out well for him. And he said, Casey, I don't know why I would put any of this money in the market. Somebody in my position that has enough to last the rest of my life, why would I risk losing any of it at this point? He was also working with a client who's still practicing as a financial planner, and he had somebody came in, had $2.5 million. They were in their mid-60s, and they were in the same position where they didn't need the money. He said, why would we take this and put it into a fragile market where you could lose half of your life savings when you have enough money to last the rest of your life? And I think Mom is in the same situation here. Karen, you've got Mom in a situation where she has $500,000, and often we see from the kids and grandkids going, man, Mom really needs to get that money invested. She could make all kinds of money if she gets that invested. Well, geez, Mom just needs to make sure she doesn't lose the money because she's got enough to last the rest of her life. Even if she only made 3% a year, that's $15,000. Well, that's a nice little piece of interest she's making every year at 3, 4, 5% a year. Right. And she can do that without taking risk in the market. So the number one thing I would have you really think hard about is not taking Mom's money and throwing it someplace where she could potentially lose it. Now, if Mom, she's never going to need that money, well, then maybe the best thing is if you guys want to take risk with it, then she goes ahead and gives that to the kids so that they can take risk with what's now their money and not Mom's.
Good input. All right, so we appreciate all your questions. You can also email us at info@howardbailey.com. We might pick your question and use it here on the air. And if you'd like to learn more about what you're focusing on today, we hope that you'll take advantage of this opportunity and visit thepurposebasedretirement.com, where you can pick up a free copy of Casey's book, The Purpose-Based Retirement, or get your copy of his 2017 Guide to Maximizing Retirement Efficiency. That's going to help you uncover some action steps that you can take this year to make 2017 your very best year ever. Again, that's thepurposebasedretirement.com. And as always, feel free to give the team at Howard Bailey a call with any specific concerns or questions you might have. The number's right there on your screen. Our question of the day: what percentage of your portfolio should be devoted to equities under a traditional balanced portfolio? We've got some choices on the screen. Casey will tell you which is correct when we come back.
Hi, I'm a certified financial planner practitioner. Are you one of the lucky few that will still carry a pension into retirement? Is your company offering you a buyout or a lump sum pension option? If you're seeking independent, unbiased advice from an advisor that can inform you about all of your options, then look no further. You deserve a lifetime of financial confidence due to a lifetime of income. And at Howard Bailey Financial, it's our goal to help you achieve that. If you'd like to see how a CFP professional can best serve you, give us a call today.
You need a plan for retirement to create the lifestyle you've always dreamed of. The first step is to tune into the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with your hosts, Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson, every Saturday morning at 11 and Sunday afternoon at 1 on 1190 WOWO and 107.5 FM.
Well, we left you thinking about the question of the day. What percentage of your portfolio should be devoted to equities in a traditional balanced portfolio? Casey, which one of those choices is correct?
Lee, the answer is, drum roll please, it is C, 60% equities. 60% equities would be a traditional balanced portfolio. And this has been the way to invest over the last 30 or 40 years. And this all came out of modern portfolio theory. Harry Markowitz won a Nobel Prize for his work in the balanced portfolio, among many other things. And the stock and bond portfolio today, we might say, is dead. Now, why do they call it a balanced portfolio? Well, a stock and bond portfolio, those stocks should be going up while those bonds are going down. The bonds are going up while the stocks are going down. We have a balanced portfolio that reduces volatility and should also increase returns. If we go back to those days when that was really the flagship of investing, buying and holding in a 60-40 portfolio, we would find that the 10-year bond yields in 1980 were 11%. While the stock earnings yields were over 13%, implying an annual portfolio return of over 12% per year of that 60-40 stock bond portfolio mix. But today, as you know, we find ourselves in a different world. In 2017, we find ourselves with a 10-year bond yield that's around 2 to 2.5%. We find ourselves with stock earnings that are around 4 to 5% per year. That's implying an annualized portfolio return moving forward around 3.6% per year. We've got different challenges today than we used to have. And one of those is interest rates, right? And we're going to get into what each one of these challenges are to that traditional model of 60-40 investing, to buying and holding, which is probably what you've been doing with your 401ks or your IRAs over the years that you've been saving for retirement and accumulating, is just dollar cost averaging into these different areas. Well, as interest rates fell, we saw bond prices rise. We were able to collect our interest on those bonds and just invest in indexed bond ETF would take care of all of our needs because we saw bond prices rise. We saw interest rates continue to hit, the interest payments continue to hit on those bond funds, and the stock earnings, because of economic growth, continued to rise. We find ourselves with different challenges today, which are going to require more complex solutions than just simply investing in a 60-40 portfolio when you're in retirement. One of those biggest risks is the risk of outliving your investments. Longevity continues to increase. So back in the 1950s, we used to have a female, the average woman, age 65, had a life expectancy of 80. The average male had a life expectancy of 77. And now we find the average female with a life expectancy of 85. That's an additional 5 years that your life savings has to last. If we combine these two life savings, they probably need to last an additional 10 years. And that means that we have to have consistent and reliable income strategies that rely on more than just stocks and bonds and hoping that the market performs. We need some consistent, reliable income that we can depend on that maybe your parents or grandparents had back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, like pensions and guaranteed income. If you don't have those sources, if you don't have that foundation of income, how can you know you're never going to run out of money? Our second challenge is slowing economic growth. If we go back to the 60s and 70s, we saw economic growth of 4 to 6%, sometimes in the 6 to 8% range. And that line, this red line, shows us as it continued to fall over the last 40 to 50 years, we find ourselves today going from 4 to 6% to 2 to 4% to often below 2% annualized growth in the economy. And we can all imagine with a slow growing economy that should have a negative effect on stock market growth into the future as well. Now we have rising interest rates. Now we talked about falling interest rates over the last 40 years. As interest rates fell, bond prices rose. Now we do recognize that things tend to work in a pattern. Things that have happened in the past tend to happen again in the future. If we've had low interest rates in the past, they should be higher in the future. Higher interest rates today mean lower interest rates in the future. And now we find ourselves lowest interest rate environment of all time. We could see rising interest rates for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. It could take a long time time to get back to long-term averages. However, that rising interest rate environment can have a very negative impact on bonds and bond funds, most specifically. If we go back to the 1950s, from 1950 to 1959, we can find a rising interest rate environment that's close in similarity as we can find to the one that we find ourselves in today. As we see interest rates continue to rise, we can see during the 50s, we saw long-term U.S. Treasuries lose 20% of their value over that period of time. Long-term corporate bonds lose 10%, 10-year U.S. Treasuries lose 12%, and even cash, Treasury bills, 3-month T-bills lost 1.5% over that period of time. And we would say typically we couldn't lose money in Treasury bills because they're a safe place to put our cash. But even short-term bonds can lose money in a rising interest rate environment. Then we have low volatility that we find today. And you might say, well, that sounds counterintuitive. How could one of the challenges be low volatility? Well, when we look at volatility, we measure volatility by something called the VIX index, the VIX index. Throw that into Google, and what you're going to find is this. You're going to find that we're in one of the lowest volatility environments we've seen in a number of years, and this is a mean reverting index. That means it always reverts to the mean, and the mean is well above where we find ourselves today. That means that we expect a spike in volatility. Think of this as a compressed spring. That's really how volatility works. The further we compress that spring and the longer we hold that spring down, the further up it's going to pop. And it's not so much the risk to portfolio losses that volatility can create. It's more so the risk to your emotional stability and panic selling and not reacting to that panic selling, most importantly. Today we have low interest rates. We've talked about this many times before. We've seen over the last several years, over the last 8 years, people have earned little to no returns on their cash for the last 8 years. And many expect that to return here in the near future back to what you might have experienced years ago when you could get that 10-15% CD rate. I had a gentleman in my office just the other day, and he said, boy, I had a 16% CD back in the early 80s. And he said, I wouldn't be sitting in this room right now if I could go get an FDIC insured CD paying double-digit returns. But we don't have that today, and we may not have that for a number of years into the future. If we go back to the Great Depression, after the Great Depression, interest rates went to zero, and it took years before we saw them even get above zero, about a decade before they got above zero, and about 34 years before they ever got back to their long-term average, which is 3.7% per year. Now, if we're expecting increasing interest rates in the bank, that's probably unlikely to happen as well, too, because the Fed has pumped so much money into these banks that it's supply and demand. They don't need to increase rates to get additional cash because they're already full of cash. Here's the implications for you. You're going to need more sophisticated solutions than an ETF buy and hold portfolio. You need to increase your diversification across stocks and bonds and other things, and a more nimble allocation, and most importantly, have a plan that not just plans for the best, but also prepares for the worst.
And I would add to that, you need to be working with someone who specializes in your phase of life in retirement, right?
Exactly. There's accumulation planners, there's retirement planners, and there's totally different risks, and it's much more complicated as you step into retirement than what it has been during your accumulation years.
So that's why we hope you'll take advantage of this offer for you to make sure that you're 100% prepared for what's ahead. We hope you will visit thepurposebasedretirement.com, and you can pick up a free copy of Casey's book or get your copy of the 2017 Guide to Maximizing Retirement Efficiency and uncover some steps that you can take this year to make 2017 your best year ever. Again, that's purposebasedretirement.com, and you can always feel free to call the Howard Bailey team with any questions or concerns you may have. The number on your screen right there, 866-482-9559. That's our program. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.